So Apple have announced finally their April spring-loaded event next Tuesday, but I'm a little bit underwhelmed. Welcome back to Mark Ellis Reviews, and thank you as always for subscribing, and if you haven't, just click the button. I'm going to let you into a little secret. I really had to force myself to film this video. It's all about Apple's spring-loaded event, which is taking place next week. Now this has been rumoured for a long time. We thought we were going to have something in March. That never happened. As it turns out, we now have an invite, a virtual invite, to the Apple event next week. And it's important to say that this is all guesswork at the moment. As always with Apple rumours, we really don't know what's going to happen until Tim or whoever else takes to the virtual stage next week and tells us what's coming. So I thought, let's dig into why I can't get excited by going through each of the potential product releases we might see at the spring-loaded event. New iPad Pros. Now I have a 2018 iPad Pro sitting in front of me here, and it's recently come back to life for me after I bought a £15 stand. I'll put a link to the review of that stand in the description, and at some stage I might do a review on here. Let me know if you'd like to see that. But basically the big 12.9-inch iPad has become pretty much unused for me since I bought the iPad Air, and certainly since I bought the M1 MacBook Air. But now I'm using it again, and I'm using it just for taking notes and things and reviewing stuff on the screen. It's clear just how amazing iPads are. I've always known this. I've been an iPad owner since 2010, since the very first generation. But when you pick up an iPad that is 2-3 years old, you're just reminded of how amazing these devices are. And that's a problem for Apple, because where do you go from the point of having an amazing tablet already? They've added LiDAR recently, which no one uses. Better cameras. Very few people, I think, take photos with their iPads these days. I know there are some outliers there. They're so well made. The batteries, in my experience, don't seem to degrade as much as iPhone batteries over time. The screens are great. I know they're not OLED, but they are superb. And even the Apple Pencil has been, for me, it's been a very useful device. I think the second generation Apple Pencil nailed it completely. I think it was just a perfect design. And then they released the iPad Air. I can't recommend the iPad Pro now unless you need or want that bigger 12.9-inch screen. For everyone else, the Air is just the best iPad to get. Now for next week's event, if we look at the invite, there's this kind of clearly drawn Apple logo, and they do this quite often when there is an iPad event on the horizon, which is what makes me think that the majority of next week's event is going to be about the iPad. It might be that we get a new Apple Pencil. That's marginally interesting, but I can't get excited, one, about the iPad Pros or the iPad Mini, which I'll come on to in a moment. The iPads are just too good. Apple have worked themselves into a corner with this one. What can Apple do with the iPad to get me excited? I just genuinely cannot think of anything. I've been looking forward to an iPad Mini refresh for ages. I'll tell you how long it's been. It's been as long as I've had this, which I think is something like the second generation iPad Mini. I love this form factor. I love the size of it. Great for reading stuff. It's great for just lobbing in your bag and just taking out for reference and stuff. But it's an aging design. Now last week we saw a tweet by legendary Apple leaker Sonny Dixon, and this purported to show new iPad Pros and also an iPad Mini, like pre-production versions. And the iPad Mini looked like that, basically. It didn't have the new Pro design without the bezels or the thinner bezels, and it was just a massive disappointment for people like me who want to see an iPad Mini redesign. Now I think we will see a new iPad Mini next week, but if Sonny Dixon's tweet is to be believed, and it's completely a rumour at this stage, it may look exactly the same as the current iPad Mini. And for me, that's an instant fast forward, get a shot of that part of the event. The only reason I think there's probably two reasons actually that Apple are doing this. Either one is just to completely rinse any profitability out of that iPad Mini production line, which must be, the margins for that must be pretty significant. And secondly, I do wonder if they're worried about a better iPad Mini cannibalizing the iPad Air. Because I bought my iPad Air a little bit out of frustration actually. I wanted a new iPad Mini, but I couldn't bring myself to buy the current generation, which looks like it has looked for the last 4, 5, 6, probably 7 years. So in search of a smaller iPad, I got the Air. And I do wonder if Apple are perhaps a little bit worried that if they create this great little iPad Air with very small bezels and that kind of pro look, and the look that the iPad Air was given, I do wonder if they're worried that the Air may become a second choice for people and people may flock to the Mini. That's one possibility. Another possibility, which is slightly unpalatable for people like me, is that not enough people are buying the iPad Mini. It's not a big market for Apple. We've seen that with the iPhone 12 mini. Who knows? The third generation AirPods need to be a press release. I mean, if we see these at the event next week, there has to be a really interesting story behind them. I can't really think what that will be. AirPods, I think, have changed the game with headphones. That said, there are some really interesting alternatives from other manufacturers, which are in some cases better. They're always nearly cheaper, but sometimes they're actually better in terms of sound, convenience. I've got some stuff coming up on the channel for that in due course, but these third generation AirPods are expected to look a little bit like AirPods Pro, but not have the active noise cancelling. That's great, no problem with that at all. Can't get that excited about it. What I do hope is that that will then push down the price of the AirPods 1 if they keep them on board, and certainly the AirPods 2. And the reason for that is because when it comes to innovation, I think the AirPods are 100% up there with the M1 Max. They have completely changed the conversation about headphones. I just want more people to be able to get them and use them because they're still expensive when compared to the competition. AirTags, these have been talked about for ages. Again, I just can't get that excited about AirTags. I understand why they might be coming, but I think what bothers me about them, and I think the reason we haven't seen them yet, I don't think it's got much to do with the hardware. I'm sure it's been difficult to get them right. I think it's far more to do with the story that Apple needs to build around these AirTags. AirTags, if what they are rumoured to be is true, are basically little devices which you can attach to pretty much anything you like to track where it is. Now the problem with that is that they are essentially tracking devices which you could attach to someone's car, you could attach to a person, you could do all sorts of things with these. I think Apple needs to be very careful about the story they tell about them, because if the idea for AirTags gets into the wrong reporter's hands, for example, there'll be some pretty nasty privacy-based headlines that follow the event. And Apple knows this. And I think, like I say, I think that's why they've been spending so long trying to get this product right. It has to be completely watertight in terms of the benefits AirTags offer us consumers, the fact that they will be very heavily influenced by privacy concerns. And I've been thinking, desperately thinking what I could use AirTags for, and there's two things. One of them is my dog. Now he does this thing in the house where he just vanishes for periods of time. We can't find him. He always returns. I don't know where he goes. I joked on a recent podcast that I was on that I've got a feeling he might be going into Narnia or something. So the idea of putting an AirTag on his collar or something just to find out where on earth he goes in the house when he disappears. We haven't got a big house, by the way. We don't live in a castle. That's marginally interesting. The other one was the idea that AirTags will be waterproof, which I guess they probably will be, because I could then put them in my pint glass, and when we are once again allowed to go out and drink in bars and pubs, I'll at least know which one is my pint. I'm being daft. But that's the point, really. I can't think of a reason in my life personally to have AirTags or get excited about them. Losing your keys, fine, no problem, but we know they're probably going to be expensive. So again, the story has got to be brilliant. Very quick note on AR, augmented reality, virtual reality. I have no interest in it, if I'm honest. It all feels very gimmicky at the moment. And this idea of having eyewear that is in some way AR based and gives you, a heads-up display of where you are and what's happening around you. We saw Google's attempt at this. You end up at the moment with these glasses with big things attached to them. I think until you can have a pair of AR glasses that look like that look like regular glasses, and that can be added to prescription lenses and all that sort of stuff, it just feels like future tech that's far, far away in the distance. I really don't think we're going to see anything AR-based from Apple at the spring-loaded event. We might see some stuff developer-wise at WWDC, but even that I think is only going to be laying the groundwork for something that is much, much further in the distance. New Macs, the more I think about next week's event, the less I think we're going to see new Macs. I'm sorry. I hope I'm wrong with this. I'd love to see an iMac. That's the one thing that I'd love to see. But I don't know, something about this event feels very iPad-ish now, and I just don't know if they're going to tag a new Mac onto the end of that. At a push, we may potentially see the smaller version of the next iMac with the M chip in it, but even that, I just don't think, I don't know, for some reason I have this feeling we're not going to see it next week, which for me would be a really big disappointment, I won't lie. So if I'm right, and I hope I'm not, I do think we'll see the next round of M-based Macs after WWDC, probably Q3, Q4 of this year. I've spoken about this previously, that I do think Apple has reached a bit of a plateau with certain products, and the iPhone is a classic example of that. I just don't get excited about the iPhone anymore. It's a brilliant phone, it's still my daily driver. I have been using an Android phone for the last month, which has been a really interesting experiment, but I will go back to using the iPhone, but I'm not excited about it. iPads are exactly the same thing for me. And the worrying thing about iPads, as great as they are, is that product lineup is getting a little bit bloated. As I mentioned before, distinguishing between the iPad Air Air and the iPad Pro is incredibly difficult, and 9 times out of 10 I would always say get the iPad Air. But I should probably caveat all of this by saying that my lack of excitement about next week has nothing to do with the Mac, partly because I don't think the Mac is going to feature next week, but also because I think the M1 has, like I've mentioned before, changed the game with computing, and I'm genuinely excited about what might come next. I don't have an answer to this either. That's the problem. I can't think of where Apple takes certain product lines next. I'm looking forward to WWDC. I'm looking forward to see what they do with iOS and with macOS and potentially tvOS. But aside from that, I just don't know what they're going to do next. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments. What are you looking forward to at next week's event? Now, something I have got very excited about recently and over the last 4 months is my M1 MacBook Air. So if you'd like to hear why that has been so exciting for me and how it has completely changed my working life, then keep watching for a link to my latest review of the M1 MacBook Air. Until next time, thank you as always for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.